As you entered the auditorium, you were given a form. If you care to make comments regarding the opinions and ideas that you hear in today's forum, we ask for your written comments on that for Western and Master's and PhD in Economics from the University of Kentucky. Dr. Ramsey began his career in higher education in the classroom, teaching economics at Middle Tennessee State University and at Loyola University, where he also served as assistant, then associate dean in the College of Business Administration. Upon moving back to the Commonwealth, Dr. Ramsey served in various capacities within state government while serving as an adjunct professor at the University of Kentucky. In 1988, he was selected as the chief state economist, and from 1989 to 1992 served in that capacity in addition to being the executive director of the Office of Financial Management and Economic Analysis. Dr. Ramsey joined the staff of Western in July of 1992 as Vice President of Finance and Administration. In November 1995, he was selected by Governor Paul Patton to serve as the State Budget Director, a position that he fulfills concurrently with his vice presidency at Western. Dr. Ramsey lives in Bowling Green with his wife Jane and their two school-aged children, Jenny and Jackie. Please welcome with me Dr. Jim Ramsey.
Thank you very much, Frida. At our opening session this morning with community leaders, Fred Hensley introduced me and said I had a PhD from Western Kentucky University. And I knew that was something that Dr. Birch was interested in, but I didn't know that she was that good and had already been able to accomplish that as part of the higher education reform. But Jane and I are very excited to be here and be with you today and be on campus. We're also very honored to be part of the select group of finalists to be your next president at Western Kentucky University. Western Kentucky University has been an important part in our lives and the lives of our family. Both of my parents graduated from Western Kentucky University, and I still hear them talk about professors that they had when they were here and talk about staff and their fond remembrances of Western Kentucky University. Jane and I are both graduates, as Frida indicated, of Western Kentucky University, and Jim Davis is here with us today, and I don't mean to embarrass him at all, but when I was a freshman at Western Kentucky University in 1966, I can't tell you how important Dr. James Davis was in my life. As a freshman living in Central Hall, I had a 7:30 PE class. My PE instructor for a course called conditioning was Joe Bugle. And by 8:30, when that class was over, I was ready to go back to Central Hall. But at 9:10 in Cherry Hall, I had Dr. Davis for introductory class to geography. Now, I wasn't going to study and major geography, but that was a course that I needed as part of my educational requirements to graduate. And Jim Davis was an outstanding professor, an outstanding instructor, and he made me want to be in class at 9:10. And he took me under his wing, and because of his devotion and his commitment, he helped me to be able to accomplish many of the things that I've accomplished today. And I could tell the same story about many other people on this campus: Bob Pulcinelli, Dick Cantrell. I'm getting of the age where there aren't many of you left, but there are a number of people. Gene Evans was an important part of my life, and when I graduated, Gene wanted me to go and get an MBA, and there was a guy here named Wayne Dobson, many of you may remember, who was chair of the economics program, and Wayne encouraged me to get to go on beyond a master's and get a PhD, and of course Wayne was an economist, so he wanted me to go into economics, but Wayne was solely responsible for me getting a graduate assistantship at the University of Kentucky. So those kind of experiences have been very important in our lives, and we're very committed to Western Kentucky University and to this community. I believe that this is a critical time for higher education nationally and in Kentucky. I believe that higher education is at an important crossroads, and Western Kentucky University is at an important crossroads. All institutions of higher education are having to transform from a producer-driven system to a customer-driven system. In the past, we in higher education have been able to sit back and
teach what we want, when we want, and where we want. Changing technologies have made all that much different today. Through technology, you can be anywhere and obtain information and knowledge. A speaker at the faculty meeting a couple of years ago said institutions of higher education no longer have a monopoly on the dissemination of information. Bob Jefferson and us were talking at lunch about how institutions like Purdue are offering MBAs over the internet and the web, and they're coming into our service area and offering those programs. The higher education industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and private businesses, private vendors, companies that have never been in this business before see the opportunity to make a profit. And so we, in the institutions of higher education, must transform ourselves and focus on our students, and our students, both traditional and non-traditional, and what their needs are and what they're telling us in terms of the demands that they have on our system. I think higher education in Kentucky is at a very important crossroads. I think this is a very unique time for higher education in Kentucky. It's been a very long time since we've had a governor who has understood the relationship between education and economic development. And Governor Patton understands that, and as a result of that understanding of how important investing in people and investing in human capital is, Governor Patton has made a commitment to put more dollars, more funding, more resources into higher education in Kentucky. In the recent session of the special session of the Kentucky General Assembly, House Bill 1 was the substantive law that changed higher education. House Bill 4 was the appropriation bill, and in that bill was $40 million, increased funding for higher education. The governor is committed in the next biennium to another $60 million of funding for higher education over and above inflationary increases. I think this is a unique time for higher education and for Western Kentucky University, and during this period of time I want to be your next president of Western Kentucky University. Several weeks ago, during the testimony on higher education debate that took place in Frankfurt, the eminent constitutional scholar, Mr. Sherrill Snyder, testified before one of the education committees. And in his testimony, he made a comparison between Louisville and Atlanta. And he said, you know, it wasn't too many years ago that Louisville and Atlanta were very similar cities. But policymakers in Atlanta determined to travel one road, and policymakers in Louisville decided to travel another road. He went on to say that it hadn't, even in more recent time, within the last 20 years, Nashville and Louisville have not been markedly different cities. But again, the policymakers and the people, the leadership of Nashville decided to go one path, and the leadership in Louisville decided to go another path. And Mr. Snyder concluded his remarks by talking about missed opportunities and the missed opportunities for the city of Louisville, and how Louisville today struggles with its identity and in terms of economic development relative to these other cities. When the history of higher education reform in this state is written in the next 23 years, I want that history to say that Western Kentucky University is the leader in higher education reform in this state. Not a leader, but the leader. I do not want the history to say that this was a time of missed opportunities for Western Kentucky University. Our challenges are many, and it will not be easy. Our task will be difficult, but we can do it. My agenda as president of your university would be very simple. I would have three focuses. The first would be to give us a clearly defined focus. We've been through a lot of planning processes over the last several years. When I came to Western in 1992, many of you had already been through the process that resulted in Western 21, a very good document, a very vital document that outlined many of the planning parameters and much of the future of this institution. Since that time, we've been through many, many more planning processes. We've been through a SACS visitation. We've been through a strategic planning process with the Council on Higher Education. We've been through performance funding. We've been through moving to a new level. And I think that as we move forward and begin to implement the higher education reform legislation in Kentucky, we need a clear focus, a clearly stated focus, a clearly articulated focus. I quoted this morning Colleen Mendel in front of our community group, and I was doing some training for Colleen in one of her groups in Winston-Salem about a month ago. We were talking about strategic planning, and Colleen said something that I thought was very important and very insightful. She told the story of a visitor to the Johnson Space Center in Houston. And the visitor walked in and went up to one of the people at the Space Center and says, "What is your job?" And the person said, "My job is to keep the facilities clean so that the engineers can do their work so that the United States can put a man on the moon." I think we need a clear focus, a focus that is developed campus-wide. Stephen Covey says, "No involvement, no commitment." We need involvement in coming up and defining what we're going to be about, how we're going to go about achieving the goals of the Higher Education Improvement Act of 1997. My second agenda as president of your university would be to help rebuild the sense of family at Western Kentucky University. We have a great faculty, we have a great staff. But through budget cuts and reallocations and privatization, I think our sense of family has been shaken. And I think that it's time for us to devote our time and attention to rebuilding that sense of family at Western Kentucky University. I think we've done a lot of things and tried to do some things, but this needs to be a major priority as we move forward. The third agenda item that I would have as your president of Western Kentucky University would be to rebuild many of our external relationships. We have a strong alumni that care about this institution, alumni that want to be part of this institution, and alumni that want to help this institution. And I think in many cases we've lost contact with many of those graduates of Western Kentucky University, many of those people who can be helpful to us and supportive of us as we move forward. I think we need to work on our relationships with our elected leadership in locally, at the state level, since we are primarily funded from the state, but even at the national level. We're at a unique time where we have a governor committed to higher education. We're at a unique time where we have a very strong legislative delegation from this area, a delegation that has a deep feeling about Western Kentucky University and a deep feeling about higher education, and we need to work with that elected leadership. We also need to work with the newly appointed Council on Post-Secondary Education, because the new Council on Post-Secondary Education will be defining the criteria for us to qualify for additional funding from the strategic investment funds that have been established in Frankfort. In fact, right now there's a bank account with our name on it. $1.4 million is sitting in an account for Western Kentucky University. The council has not yet defined or decided what the criteria will be for us to tap that money, but when they do, we need to be part of that debate and that discussion of what the criteria are for qualifying for that money. And then we need to be positioned with a clear focus so that we can access those funds and have those funds available. We need to rebuild our relationships with the business community in this area. We need to rebuild our relationships with the many friends of Western Kentucky University who are not graduates of Western Kentucky University and who may not even be part of this community. But it's really interesting to see the number of people who care deeply about this institution and as Jerry Wilder could tell you, are not graduates of this institution. And as we talked at lunch, it wouldn't take but just a matter of moments and Jerry could tick off the names of 10, 12, 20 of those people. So my third focus would be on external relationships. And I think if we can rebuild these relationships and build on these relationships with alumni, with our elected leadership, with the community here in Bowling Green, the business community in Bowling Green and Warren County, and with our many friends, there's no doubt that we'll be successful in achieving our fundraising goals. We're ready to embark on our first capital campaign. And a lot of people say, well, you don't have any fundraising experience. But if we believe in the product that we're offering, and if we build those relationships throughout our community and throughout the state, we will be successful in fundraising. What we have to do is convince people of our seriousness, of our commitment to academic excellence. Because what we have to do now is convince people to invest in Western Kentucky University. We're not looking for donations. We're not a charity. We're an institution that can help solve the problems of this Commonwealth. And so we want people to invest in Western Kentucky University. And if we have products that are quality products and products that we believe in, and we rebuild these relationships, we will be successful. A number of people have said, well, what is your management style? I would take you back to my background as an economist. And as an economist, I believe in the things that we teach in the classroom: specialization, division of labor, comparative advantage. I don't have all the answers. There's no way I can have all the answers. But I'm committed in putting together teams that can work together, where we blend the various talents and abilities of people across campus to solve problems. When I went to work, when the governor called and asked me if I would come to work as state budget director, my immediate answer was no. I don't want to leave Western, and I don't want to leave Bowling Green. As we talked, we decided that maybe we could work out some kind of arrangement on a short-term basis. The new governor that's elected in Kentucky is faced with a very awesome task. They're elected in November, inaugurated in December, and have to submit a 2-year budget in January. And when the governor and I talked about the possibility of me working and helping him through that first session, I said, Governor, one of the things that I'll need to do is be able to put together a team. And we put together a team, 5 people. We had a point guard, and we had a shooting guard, and we had a power forward. And we worked well as a team, and we set goals. And at the end of that legislative session, we had accomplished every goal that we'd set out to accomplish. And so I think that through teamwork, we can accomplish the goals and the vision of this institution. A person that I have a great deal of respect for, and many of you in this room have a great deal of respect for, and so you may have heard this person say this, but a person that I have a great deal of respect for spelled the word team for me one time, and they said, you spell team, together everyone achieves more. And I believe in that. I fundamentally believe in that. This individual went on to tell a story, and it's a little bit corny, but I'll tell it anyway. The story of two beautiful, powerful horses that were at a county fair. And there was a competition to see which horse could pull the most weight. And the first horse pulled 8,000 pounds, and the second horse pulled 9,000 pounds. And someone said, well, I wonder if we teamed the horses together, put them together, how many pounds they could pull. And when they teamed the horses together, they didn't pull 17,000 pounds. They pulled 27,000 pounds. So coming together as a team, I feel confident that we can make Western Kentucky University the leader in higher education reform in Kentucky. I'm confident that Western Kentucky University will be an institution that stands for academic quality and for economic opportunity. So again, we thank you for this opportunity. I guess now I'm supposed to take questions. Frida, weren't you going to try to answer all the questions for me? Didn't you agree to that by being panel? Okay, so if you're not going to answer the questions, then we'll open the floor to any questions or comments that you might have.
Already answered part of this, but I'd like you to think about what you consider your strongest strength and also your greatest weakness as an administrator, and feel free to cite examples from your administrative career.
Okay. I think that the greatest strength I have is my appreciation of the academic mission of this institution. I believe very much in it. I've tried to show that, not for resume purposes or not to prove anything, but through my commitment in the classroom and my commitment to excellence in the research that I've done. So I understand what this institution is to be about, and that is teaching and learning and academic excellence. My greatest management weakness is, some people would say I delegate and am too decentralized in my decision making. As an economist, I understand the concept of opportunity cost. And I understand that I've got to use my time in the areas where I can be productive. And so I'm going to rely on team members. And I'm going to entrust people. And there are people who say, well, sometimes you're too trusting and you need to be more involved and you need to get more bogged down in some of the attention and detail. And I don't want to get bogged down in attention and detail. I want to keep my eye on the vision and the goal. And I can be very intense if we have a focus. And we've had some real challenges that we've addressed here at Western. We've had some real challenges in the last 18 months that we've addressed at the state. But we've set goals, we've been intense in our focus, and we've accomplished everything that we've set out to do. Now, there are probably a lot of other people in the room who could speak to my management weaknesses, but we won't call on them. But, but in all honesty, I would invite you to talk to people. I have nothing to hide. I want what's best for Western Kentucky University, and I would seriously invite you to talk with the people that I work with and that work with me. I don't have any secrets. For years, my calendar is available. Anybody who wants to know where I'm going to be and what I'm going to do, that's fine. I don't have any secrets. So, I invite you to talk with people. And again, I think that I would reiterate, I don't have all the answers. I don't think that it's possible for any one person to. I think that we need to work together, to use the talents of different individuals. And so, again, I would say if there is a flaw I have, it's that, and some people would say that this is a flaw, and the flaw that I have to work on. But it's probably that I delegate and decentralize too much.
Dr. Ramsey,
Up here.
given your relationship to the governor and your involvement in the reform measures, the reform effort, higher education, how do you see yourself as being a strong advocate for Western in the circumstance that activities or actions of the Council on Post-Secondary Education are seen not in the best interest of Western by the university community?
Well, I think that's a good question in a lot of ways. Number one, I think the jury's still out on the new Council on Post-Secondary Education. And I think we need to try to work and shape the new Council on Post-Secondary Education. The problem right now with the Council on Post-Secondary Education is about half the members of the new council were members of the old council. Worse yet, and I hope nobody takes offense at this, but the staff is identical at this point to the staff of the old council. We need a new thought process and a new leadership at the Council on Post-Secondary Education, bottom line. The Council on Post-Secondary Education has been regulatory in nature. It says you can't do this, you can't do this, you got to do this. We need a council that is visionary and sets the agenda for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. So, one, I hope that as we move forward, it will be a different council with a different focus than we've had in the past. Secondly, I would point out to you that as we look at the landscape of Kentucky, there's going to be a whole new cadre of educational leaders in the state of Kentucky in 1 year. The Council on Post-Secondary Education will have a new president. The newest Board of Regents, the Kentucky Community and Technical College System, will have a new president. Western will have a new president. Northern has a new president. Eastern will have a new president. Kentucky State will have a new president. Presidents at Murray and U of L are still fairly new in the system, and so with the exception, really I guess maybe of Moorhead and the University of Kentucky, there'll be a lot of new political leadership. And I think that with that is the opportunity for collaboration and efforts among the institutions that maybe hasn't existed in the past. Finally, I would say to you that we have to recognize that what's good for the Commonwealth of Kentucky is good for Western Kentucky University. There'll be times when we don't agree with everything that the council recommends and everything that the governor recommends, and everything that the General Assembly recommends. But I firmly believe, and again, maybe one of my weaknesses is that I tend to be naive at times, but I firmly believe that what's in the best interest of this state is in the best interest of us all. And so we won't get everything we want. We won't be satisfied with everything. But I think the governor, in his address to the faculty, made a very critical point. Our job is to increase the size of the apple, not fight over bites of the apple, but get the apple to be bigger. And so I think that I'd sort of turn your question, John, around a little bit and say that if anything, because of the background and experience I've had in this legislation, we can take that to our advantage in the implementation of the post-secondary education improvement. There'll be a lot of decisions made over the next several months. Next several months are absolutely critical for higher education in this state. The General Assembly is going to meet in January, and the General Assembly is going to be requested by the governor to increase appropriations to higher education by $60 million. So a lot of decisions are going to be made. And we want to be on the front end of that train and have impact and influence in those decisions and play a role in how those decisions are made.
Dr. Ramsey, one of the challenges facing Western will be to identify a distinct role or mission for itself in the higher education system of Kentucky and in the United States. I realize this is something you, in terms of fleshing out, you may want to reflect on a little while, but do you have some ideas yourself that you'd like to share with us about what you see as the distinctive niche or distinctive role for Western to play looking down the road a little ways?
The only thing that I've really thought about so far is I clearly believe we need to have the preeminent economics program in the... that was a joke now. Although, no, I think, again, I'd come back to what the governor said last week is that, he made the point that at one point he believed that the state needed to prescribe that, and that he felt like there needed to be a recipe, very detailed statement of the mission and focus and programs of distinction for each institution. And then he became convinced that those are really institutional decisions. I think we have a unique opportunity. We were talking at lunch, and right now you could pick up a mission statement for Moorhead and a mission statement for Western, and you wouldn't know one institution from the other. I think the critical thing that we've got to decide in the very near future is the process that we go through to define what our role and what our mission and what our focus is. Again, I believe very much no involvement, no commitment, and it can't be written in Mount Weatherby, and it can't be written by me, and it can't be written by the vice presidents, and it can't be written by the deans. Sorry, deans, I know you all were counting on doing that, but it needs, if it is to be something that is fully bought into and committed to by everybody on this campus, there needs to be involvement. I think we have to also intertwine into that the realization that that there are needs of the business community in Kentucky and of the Commonwealth of Kentucky in terms of the future of Kentucky. And so the difficult task, I think, John, that we're going to have is defining a process that takes these external factors into play with a campus-wide decision-making process. And then we need to do that in a rational fashion, but we need to do that as soon as we possibly can. So I guess the thing that I would say as we move forward is let's think big. This is a unique opportunity. Let's not limit ourselves. There was a meeting last week of some faculty representatives somewhere, I guess in Lexington or Frankfurt, and one of our sister institutions has already said, well, we know our program of distinction, it's going to be this. And the faculty member that was there was even grumbling and saying, well, that's not even really a major part of our academic offerings, but it gets a lot of, it does a lot of service training and so forth. And so that institution was saying, but that process has already been determined on that campus. And I think that there are some strengths that we have that we can build upon in defining where we're going to be headed. But I think that that's a process that we've got to go through and think about. I think that, and I don't mean to be rambling a little bit here, but I think that there's a lot of aspects to it. As we define programs of distinction, as I look at it, I saw Joanne somewhere, Joanne's right up here in the front. Let's just say, for illustration purposes, that we take journalism and we say journalism is a program of distinction. That journalism graduate needs to not only have been exposed to the very best of instructors in journalism and technology. And journalism not only needs to have all the resources to have a first-class program, but those students also take political science, and they take economics, and they take English, and they take math. We've got to be excellent in all those areas. And we got to commit the resources to each of those areas to be equally good, or that this graduate may have a technical proficiency or proficiency in their major, but not have the well-rounded general education that we want. So I think as we go through this process, there are probably the programs of distinction, but then I don't know what we call everything else, programs of excellence, programs of support. But eventually we've got to get to the point where we ask ourselves, what are the things that we just really cannot commit ourselves to and be excellent in, and we're good in them, but we can't be great in them. And we probably will need to continue to provide those courses or programs to our students, but maybe that's where technology comes into play. And maybe that's where we look to the Commonwealth Virtual University, or we look to technology to provide those educational opportunities. So I really don't know, and I think there are a lot of issues out here. We, as the vice presidents, went off and sort of grappled with this some last week at a little mini retreat that Barbara had at Barren River Reservoir Thursday and Friday. And I don't know that we really reached closure, but this is something that is very important, and we're at a point where we need to begin to really get focused on how we're going to proceed.
Dr. Ramsey, you've addressed what Western needs to do locally and on a state and national level, and I'd like to know how you see Western as an international actor. And international actor. What can we do to increase our international exposure, and what you'd like to see us do?
Okay. Well, I think that first of all, that you're making a very good point. That we live in a global economy today. In my discipline, the world is much different today in terms. And some people talk about, have we outgrown recessions, and many people look at the global economy and the changes in the global economy, and the fact that we in the United States have had to become more competitive because of international competition, and as a result of that restructuring and increased competitiveness in the United States, that's one reason that we've enjoyed the economic success that we've had. So I think that the international element of our curriculum is very important, giving our students, who in many cases are students from South Central Kentucky, and they haven't had a lot of experiences nationally, much less internationally, and I think that becomes the international education is an integral part of the total education of our students. I think that we can continue to work to build partnerships. I know that Bob Jefferson and others have tried to develop, or are in the process of developing, partnerships with other institutions. I think there are scholarship programs, and we've even talked about loan programs to give students experiences in other cultures and other environments. I think that there are, through our international efforts, bringing more diverse students to the campus for our programming. And I don't know that I could give you a detailed recipe of ABCD, what we need to do, but I think it's very important. And as we go through this strategic planning process, it's a very important component that we need to focus on and to pay attention to, because I believe that it is an integral part of academic excellence. Just on a personal note, have had this reconfirmed with me based on my personal experiences over the last 4 years. The last 4 years, I've had the opportunity to travel halfway around the world to a country that before I went I had never heard of, and I still can't spell, the Republic of Kazakhstan. And we were there again this summer, and have had the opportunity to work there with their people as they try to transition from a communist economy to a market economy. And that's quite an experience, not just a professional experience, but quite a personal experience to have that exposure to a completely different culture than we have in the United States. So I think that what you're raising is a very valid point, And I think there are things that we can do to increase our diversity in this area. And I think you all probably have the best ideas, and that we need to let those ideas bubble up through the planning process and then take it from there.
I have a question on a more of a practical note. Dr. Birch brought to our attention last week during the faculty meeting that there's some $16 million, I believe, on that figure, of delayed maintenance in the facilities and some of the equipment we have here on campus. Were you planning on doing anything about that in the short term? How does that rank in your agenda? Could you please comment?
We have a very real deferred maintenance need on this campus. The philosophy in the 1960s and 1970s, when Western was going through a dramatic growth, was to build buildings quickly and build them cheaply, and that's what we did. That's what the state did. Nobody had ever heard of ADA and many of the environmental and energy efficiencies that exist today. So we have a very major deferred maintenance need on this campus. Over the past year and a half, for the first time, we've put together a 5-year deferred maintenance plan for both our E&G buildings and for our auxiliary buildings. And we know here are the things that we've got to address in year 1, or we're going to have huge problems. Here's the things that we can put off till year 2. Here's the things that we may be able to put off until year 5. But we've gone through and identified all of our deferred maintenance needs. Now, the second problem that we have is the problem of getting the work done, and that has been a major problem. In many cases, we've received funding from the state. In many cases, we've received funding from the Board of Regents, and we just haven't been able to move the projects from start to finish quickly enough. Part of that is the environment in which we live. We're a state agency, and the Board of Regents of Western Kentucky University over time has decided that for capital construction purposes, we would be under state government. In 1982, there was a bill that was passed by the General Assembly called House Bill 622. And House Bill 622 said that each institution can manage its own affairs if it chooses to do so. And we at Western have determined that we want to manage all of our affairs except capital construction. So all of our capital construction is managed and coordinated through Frankfurt. The Frankfurt process, and I'm not blaming state government, and I'm not blaming the bureaucracy there, but it's a statement of fact that the state government capital construction process is a lengthy, time-consuming process. And so that delays us. It takes 6 to 9 months to get an architect for a project. Why is that the case? Because the laws in 1992 were rewritten to minimize the influence of politics in the selection process of architects and engineers. So the elected leadership saw a problem that political influence was awarding contracts, and so they tried to correct that through the change in the law. And that change in the law has added to the delay time. We have delays here on campus, and we know that, and we have worked over the last year with Marriott. We've worked internally to try to come up with a plan to allow us to address the backlog of projects that we have. We took a plan to the Board of Regents, and I'll be very honest, it probably wasn't as thought out as we needed to have thought it out. A couple of members of the Board of Regents, before it was publicly debated with the board, asked us to go back and answer some questions and think about it a little bit more. And we did that. And we got and sat around the conference room, and we drew some T-charts and put pros and cons if we did it option A and option B and option C. And we decided when we got done with that probably the idea that we had taken to the board, were ready to take to the board several weeks earlier, might not have been the best option. And so we're reworking that now. So we're committed to trying to find a way to reduce this backlog. But capital construction is a frustration. It's slow. State projects are slow. When we were over at Barren River Reservoir last Thursday and Friday, they're doing a renovation of the lodge over there. I don't know exactly when that renovation was authorized by the state, but it was authorized a number of years ago. The state's just now getting to that project. So there are a lot of things involved. One of the things that we could look at, many of us don't think that we're quite ready to do that, is to withdraw from the state system on capital construction and take over our own capital construction process. The University of Kentucky has done that, and the University of Louisville have done that. None of the other institutions in the state have. But deferred maintenance is a problem. I have argued and will continue to argue that in terms of allocation of fund balance dollars that are available, that a very, very sizable chunk of that needs to go to deferred maintenance. And so I hope that's pretty clear on where I stand on that.
Thanks. Dr. Ramsey, I'd like to link a couple of points that you made. One about family at Western, which is crucial, I think, to the future of the institution. And another, in an economic sense, when we think about what's happening with the global economy, we think about downsizing, outsourcing. I'm thinking about adjunct faculty, part-time faculty. How do you include part-time faculty into this family that we need to build, particularly when conditions for part-time faculty are abysmal at best? Facilities are an embarrassment, payroll is an embarrassment, and of course we've got nearly 1/3 of our faculty that are part-time or adjunct. How do you bring those into the family?
Well, I think that's a good question, and Dr. Birch, would you answer that question? I've been a part-time faculty. I've been an adjunct professor, and I know what you mean about the pay and so forth. And as an adjunct, the easiest thing for me to do when I was a part-time faculty, just sort of roll in, teach my class, and roll out, and not worry about it, because for the pay and the conditions and so forth, from a pure economic perspective, might have been, well, it wasn't even worth your time to do that, but that was about it. I think that this is an issue that Academic Affairs is aware of and wants to do something, have done some things perhaps with regard to the pay and the fringe benefits. I think there are little things that we can do in terms of including those people into sessions, to committee meetings, and I know space is always at a premium, but one of the things that when I was an adjunct professor meant all the world to me was just have a place to go. I oftentimes would share it with others. I might have been teaching Tuesdays and they were teaching Thursdays, but just a place where I could go and put my books and hang out and meet with students and have some space available to me to function more like a real faculty member. So I don't know the answer to your question. I think that has to be something that we focus on. I think it's part of the sense of family that we need to be committed to developing here. And again, I know that this has gotten a lot of discussion. Dr. Birch has had discussions with us at the vice president's level on this, and I think that adjunct faculty can play a critical role in the education process. Adjunct faculty can bring experiences to the classroom that can be very beneficial, and so I think that we need to look at, through this planning process, what is the role of the adjunct and how are we going to incorporate them in as full partners into the educational process.
You're not using part-time faculty and adjunct faculty to mean the same thing, are you? Because they are not on this campus.
Right, and I should have clarified that. I actually, in my tenure with state government and then my teaching at the University of Kentucky, there were sort of two different periods, one where I was an adjunct and one where I served as a part-time. And I guess really what I was talking about were people who, and maybe this applies to our optional retirees as well. I heard the story about one optional retiree, and they said, came to work one day and their computer was gone. And that was an integral part of what they needed to do to perform their job. And so I guess what I was really sort of saying more in the broad context are those who may not be here on a full-time basis day in and day out, regardless of how we make what we may call them or what we may classify them.
You mentioned that you want Western to be at the head of the reform movement of the higher education system. Can you give some specifics of how this is going to be achieved? How do you see Western emerging as the leader in that movement?
Well, right now I'd say the University of Louisville is at the head of the class. They have a very clearly defined focus. They want to be a preeminent metropolitan university. They've identified the programs that they want to be preeminent in, and they have a method for reallocating resources to achieve that preeminence. And I think that, and I'm not saying we copy everything that the University of Louisville has done, but I think that we have, that we need to strive to get to that point. What is our mission? What is our focus? Where are our points of preeminence? Where are we going to put our resources? I think that what ties into this is our fundraising, and I think that if we can come up with those things that I've just talked about, I think that that really makes our fundraising efforts easier, because again, in terms of fundraising, what we want to do and what we have to do is convince people to invest in Western and ensure them that they'll get a rate of return on their investment. And so I see private dollars as being critical to this effort, providing us with the margin of excellence that we need. And so I think we've just got to get started and get our plan in place that says here's what we want to be, here's where we're going to be the very, very best we can be. Here are the programs that we're going to be excellent in, because we got to be excellent in them to be great in these other areas. And here's the programs that we've got to address in terms of reallocations or perhaps providing through other alternative delivery systems. I think, again, tie that then back to the fundraising, and I think that we head on that path and we travel real hard and fast on that path, and we'll jump to the head of the class. Now, I got a lot of worries about this, because right now, as we're talking, and we're talking here and what we need to do and what we should have been doing the last 6 months and the road we need to travel, there are people that are saying the same thing to the University of Kentucky, saying, University of Kentucky, you got to quit worrying about the community colleges. That's over with. You lost that battle. The community colleges are coming over to this new system. But what you now have the opportunity to be is one of the top 25 research institutions in the country. And to do that, you've got to go out and raise money, and you need to go out and start a capital campaign of $100, $200 million. And so there are people, the governor, that is pushing the University of Kentucky and its board and its leadership and corporate leaders in this state to undertake that process as we're sitting here talking today. And they're going to be out there pretty soon, I would suspect, if the leadership up there is smart. They're going to be doing that. And that's going to make our job more difficult. It doesn't make it impossible at all, because their focus and our directions, I think, will be distinct enough and different enough that we can be successful and they can be successful. But we do realize that there's a limited number of dollars out there, and that in some cases we'll go head to head. They'll probably want Billy Joe Miles to be a major contributor, and we'll probably want Billy Joe Miles to be a major contributor, and Vanderbilt wants him to be a contributor. So there'll be those kinds of situations that we'll run into. So I think that, I was talking at lunch, and again, economists like to be as quantifiable as they can, but we recognize that it's not always possible to be quantifiable and everything. But when I graduated from Fern Creek High School in 1966, the world was a lot different then. They didn't have computers, they had abacuses and stuff like that. But anyway, University of Louisville was not in the state system, and Northern was not a four-year institution. But when I graduated from Fern Creek High School in 1966, Western Kentucky University, and we hadn't been a university very long, was on a pedestal. I mean, Western Kentucky University was above Murray and Eastern and Moorhead and the other schools. And that's where we need to be. Now, you know, I think we're better than those institutions. I have no question, no doubt that we're better. But sometimes perception is reality, and I think that we've got to work on our programs of distinction. I think we've got some areas that we can focus on, and we can change that perception real quickly. I think one of the things that happened that probably at the time seemed like a good idea, and it probably was a good idea, but in 1982, higher education as a group, not just the council, and I won't blame the council, but higher education as a group thought that going to a formula funding was something that was good. And it probably was good because it eliminated some of the political infighting among the institutions. The problem is in that formula, everybody sort of becomes the same. Education is sort of homogeneous. And so institutions sort of lost their character a little bit and their distinct missions. The formula is gone. Now, there will probably be some who will want to see the formula, raised from the dead and come back to life. And I know there are some presidents, I can name you two, who will want to see, well, one wants to see the formula come back to life, and there's another who wants a type of formula put in place. But I think that because of the formula, over the last 15 years, higher education has sort of, even with the University of Kentucky and the University of Louisville, a student credit hour of English was a student credit hour of English. And so we sort of lost our identity. And so we thought that was good, but now in retrospect, we realize that some of the things that are distinctive about Western and some of the things that are our strengths, we really haven't been able to promote and sell and convince people that we are on a pedestal.
On that same reform line, how is the Community College of Western Kentucky University going to fit into the future plans of that reform?
There was a lot of discussion in Frankfort about moving the community college to this new KCTCS system, and some of us didn't think that that was a very good idea. So our community college is a college at Western Kentucky University. It's a college that, much like the business college and the Potter College and so forth, the community college plays an important and distinct role at Western Kentucky University. It is a point of access. And there are many points of access in the system, the technical schools, the 13 community colleges, our community colleges. I think distance learning will be a point of access. But I think our community college really gives us an opportunity to address the two complementary goals of higher education reform, or gives us another vehicle, another opportunity, another option to address the dual goals of the higher education reform as it applies to institutions like Western, and that is academic excellence and access.
Dr. Ramsey, as being a longtime staff member at Western, you have spoken of sense of family.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about, or could you give us some more views on privatization? We've seen many members of our group that have been privatized, and many feel that there is no group that's safe now.
Mm-hmm. Western made a very important decision in 1992 before I had come here to privatize food services. And when I came in 1992, one of my responsibilities was to oversee part of the implementation of that, and I know the disruption that this can cause on a college campus. I've experienced and seen it firsthand. I think we have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that the resources that are entrusted with us are used in the most efficient and most effective means possible. I think that we have to look at alternative and different delivery systems for our support activities. We're here to teach our students, and the academic mission of this institution is what this institution is about. For us to achieve that mission, we have to have a lot of other activities at the institution, and we have to provide those activities in as efficient and effective way as possible. None of us want to see anyone lose their job, but at the same time, I think we have to responsibly look at everything we do, and we have to evaluate everything we do, and we have to weigh the cost and the benefits. And there, have been, I think, in the past, some areas where, it has been in our best interest in terms of efficiency and effectiveness of resource allocation to privatize those activities. Doesn't make it any easier, doesn't make it any less painful. None of us want to privatize just for the sake of privatizing. I think something that is very important is a point that Joy Gramling made 2 years ago when we went through some very difficult decisions, I guess, Joy, with regard to facilities management. And Joy asked a very good question of the Board of Regents. What's our philosophy with regard to privatization? And I think that we as an institution need to develop that philosophy. We haven't done it. Joy asked the question 2 years ago. I've given you my personal views, and we've looked at areas where we felt like that we could be better stewards and better guardians of the resources that we have by outsourcing. I would say to you that we're not always certain. We didn't feel like taking the bookstore through the trauma of a bid process was something that we necessarily should do, but we were asked to do it, and we did it, and that created, and we didn't privatize. It was not in our best interest to privatize in that case, but that still created a lot of trauma for those employees that worked in the bookstore because they didn't know what their future would be down the road. So I think we really need to deal with the issue of privatization and ask ourselves, really, what is our philosophy? I do believe that at the same time, I come back and say that I can't say to you today, I wouldn't say to you, it wouldn't be honest for me to say that I'm dead set against privatization and we would never look at privatizing another function on this campus. It wouldn't be right for me to say that, because I think we have a fiduciary responsibility to look at everything that we do. And I think we need to do it in a humane way, in a sensitive way. I think Tony's done a phenomenal job in working with people who have been impacted. I think in the case, Tony, correct me, in the print shop, we were able to place everyone that was looking for another opportunity on campus, maybe. And so this is an issue that is an issue that we got to deal with to really address the sense of family, because it's causing and creating some stress, and we understand that. And I think the sooner that we can come together with an understanding of this issue, I think the quicker that we can go about building our business of sense of family. Now, sense of family is something that I believe in because I experienced it when I was a student here. Jim Davis had a great influence on my life, but there were staff on this campus that had a great influence on my life. And at lunch today, I mentioned one of those individuals, Dee Gibson. Dee Gibson had a great influence on my life as a staff member at Western Kentucky University. There were a lot of Saturday nights and Friday nights where I might have been tempted to enjoy myself a little too much on campus, and Dee made sure I didn't do that. And I'm indebted to him for that. But there is a caring faculty and staff at Western Kentucky University. But we're not the only ones that are dealing with this issue. I told the story at lunch. Delta Airlines, great employer. Almost everybody in that organization has worked their way up through the ranks, from baggy chandlers on up. And within the last several months, the chief executive officer of Delta Airlines, Ron Allen, lost his job because their board decided that the bottom line focus, and Ron Allen in the airline industry was on its knees in 1988, 1999, 1990, 91, somewhere in that time period. Early 1990s, the airline industry was on its knees. And Ron Allen made that airline profitable again. But the way in which he did it created such heartache at Delta Airlines that Delta relieved Ron Allen of his duties and have now brought in a new chief executive officer because he had totally disrupted that sense of family because of his commitment to the bottom line. So this is something that a lot of businesses and industries are grappling with, dealing with. UPS has just been through this. And so I don't think, I don't know if, I guess all I'm saying is that I don't think we're unique in the need to address this issue and to deal with this issue.
Let's assume for a couple minutes that you are not a candidate for the position. What kinds of personal qualities would you like to see in Western's next president?
Openness, honesty, someone that's fun to be with, works hard, intense, but enjoys what they're doing and make all the staff here enjoy what they're doing. My class syllabus last week, I listed our course objectives, and the last course objective was to have fun. We're going to work hard this semester in that course, and we're going to expect a lot of our students and demand a lot, but at the same time, we're going to try to enjoy ourselves. And life is short, and a lot of you all in this room have experienced and have known firsthand that life is short, and that what we have today can be taken away from us tomorrow. So I'm a firm believer that we try to, be able to enjoy what we're doing, that we work hard, and that we can work with each other in a spirit of teamwork. And so those would be the kind of qualities that I would look for in the next president. You don't get to ask a question. Okay. Go ahead.
If- Okay. If there are no further questions, this does conclude the seminar today. We thank Dr. Ramsey and his wife Jane for being with us. Thank you for your participation. The board has asked for feedback from this forum. If you would be willing to provide your comments, you may turn them in as you leave the room today. You may forward them to me by campus mail, by fax, by